What is up, everybody? Welcome back. Corey Hughes, Bloody History. I feel like I should come up with something new to say in the beginning of these damn shows, but, whatever. Not like this show will ever be a massive commercial success, right? You got to be a special kind of fucking nerd to be tuning into this show. That's for sure. So, we're going to be going back to Jack Ruby once again because I'm liking it. We've got a ton to go through. I'm not going to go through it all in a row, right? But we're on Jack Ruby Part 9, right? FBI files. Here we go, 11/25/63. Read Bureau Tell to all SACs, November 25/63. Redacted advised during latter 40s he knew of a racketeer named Rubin around Daytona, Florida, but knew nothing of his concerns or activities. Pictures of Ruby appear to be similar to Rubin as he knew him then. Informant suggests the following people should have complete knowledge of Ruby if identical with Rubin. All right. Maddie Tracy, Johnny Whalen, M.J. Browning, Daytona, Florida, and Tom Johnson, former chief of police, Daytona PD. Informant advised above people, particularly Whalen and Tracy, were buddies of Batista of Cuba when Batista was in the country. Informant also suggested Pitt Cole, DeLand, Florida, who operated gambling devices in Daytona's largest nightclub, and somebody named Kitchen, former chief deputy sheriff of DeLand, Florida, might also be familiar. Jacksonville contact above persons pursuant to referenced communication. Johnny O'Leary, proprietor of O'Leary Enterprises, a theatrical booking agency, Atlanta, advised Jack Ruby called him on the telephone about 2 years ago to book acts in Ruby's Carousel Club. Ruby had been referred to O'Leary by one Buddy King, a singer and impressionist who, according to Ruby, had worked for Ruby for many years and was very friendly with Ruby. Ruby told O'Leary he was having trouble booking acts in the Carousel Club because of Abe Weinstein, owner of the Colony Club, and his brother Barney Weinstein, owner of the Theater Club, both in Dallas. Controlled technical booking in Dallas area, and Ruby was unable to obtain good acts in his club. O'Leary talked to Ruby several times telephonically, but did not book any acts for him. Okay, so what do we have here? We've got some interesting information that Abe Weinstein and Barney Weinstein were not really overly amiable with Jack Ruby, right? Seems to be the case. O'Leary never met Ruby in person, but knows nothing of his past or present activities or associations. O'Leary unable to furnish identities of anyone in Atlanta who might know Ruby. O'Leary last heard of Buddy King playing in Dallas area, but heard the King was also played in New Orleans and Kansas City. Dallas attempt to locate King through American Guild of Variety Artists, AGVA, and interview him for all information he may have concerning Ruby. If such efforts is to locate King are negative, sit out leads to contact AGVA in New Orleans and Kansas City to locate King. Dallas, if not already done, interview Abe Weinstein and Barney Weinstein for pertinent information concerning Ruby's activities. All other logical informants in Atlanta Division, including all gambling informants, were contacted, and none ever heard of Ruby until his appearance on television on November 24 last. Identities of all informants contacted being recorded in Atlanta file. November 25th, 63. Rebutel, November 25 instant. No prior information received by the Baltimore office. FBI could be identified with Jack Leon Ruby, a.k.a. Jack Rubenstein, or his relative, Earl Ruby, Samuel Ruby, Hyman Rubenstein, Mrs. Ann Volpert, Mrs. Marion Carroll, Mrs. Harold Eileen Kaminsky, or Eve Grant. No prior information received by the Baltimore office could be identified with Lee Harvey Oswald, a.k.a. Alec J. Heidel, O.H. Lee. Files of the Central Records Bureau, Baltimore PD, Baltimore, Maryland, is checked on November 25, 1963. Did not reflect any record for Jack Leon Ruby, a.k.a. Jack Rubenstein. Sources who are familiar with gambling in Baltimore have no knowledge of Jack Leon Ruby. The files of G2, U.S. Army Counterintelligence Records Facility, Fort Holabird, Maryland, made available by a representative of that agency, were reviewed on November 25, 1963. These files failed to reflect any information identifiable with the following individuals: Alec Heidel and O.H. Lee, both AKAs of Lee Harvey Oswald; Semi-Jack Leon Ruby, a.k.a. Jack Rubenstein; Semi-Brothers of Ruby, Earl Ruby, Samuel Ruby, Hyman Rubenstein; Sisters of Ruby, Mrs. Ann Volpert and Mrs. Marion Carroll, Miss Harold Eileen Kaminsky, Eva Grant, and both parents of Ruby, Joseph and Fanny Rubenstein. Files also negative re Helen Fance Roan variations of surnames were also checked. However, G2 officials advised information one Earl Ruby, E-A-R-L-E, Earl with an E at the end, not further identified, is located at the Records Section, ASCI, Department of the Army, the Pentagon, Washington, D.C., under the following cross-reference. Subject: Communism. Semi-file number 101101/581281. Semi-date of correspondence, June 2040. June 20th of 1940. WFO review above cross-reference at ASCI Department. So again, we got Earl Ruby with an E coming up as being part of this communist thing that was going on in New Haven, Connecticut, right? Which is weird. Where did they find these files? They found the files in Maryland. Yeah, I'm starting to think that has nothing to do with our Jack Ruby or Earl Ruby or any of these people. To Director Dallas, looks like Hershey Colvin, bartender. Vertigo Key Club, Lawrence and Broadway, interviewed by SA's John R. Bassett and Eugene I. Sather. On November 25th, 63, parentheses, Vertigo, owned by Joe Bosalino, small-time Chicago hoodlum. Colvin advised he was a longtime associate of Jack Rubenstein and served in the U.S. Air Force with Rubenstein while both stationed at Kessler, Mississippi. Colvin stated upon return from Air Force he ran Showtime Lounge at Madison and Hamlin, during which time Lounge was frequented by Rubenstein's sister, Eva Grant, and Rubenstein. Colvin described Rubenstein as a hustler, unquote, who sold numerous cheap types of merchandise in an attempt to make a profit. Colvin stated Rubenstein is definitely not connected with Chicago outfit and was a person of good moral standards, although he did display a quick temper on occasion. From his knowledge, he, Rubenstein, Colvin stated in his opinion, was loyal to this country without qualification. He volunteered Rubenstein, who had sensitive nature, most probably simply flipped his lid subsequent to the assassination of the president, and in a fit of passion, did what he thought was right in taking the life of Lee Harvey Oswald. Colvin concluded by stating that Rubenstein, during the time he had known him, was positively not a radical or extremist, but a loyal citizen of the United States. Joe Bosalino, proprietor of Vertigo, interviewed by SA's Bassett and Sather on November 25th, 1963, and claimed Jack Ruby not known to him. November 26th. Subcaption background of Ruby - moral character. Rebutel all SACs November 25 last. Lil Eldridge, owner of Lil's Jockey Club, Danville, Illinois, advised today that she has heard of Jack Ruby, owner of the Carousel Club, Dallas, Texas. She recalled an MC named Bob Mitchell telling her that he had worked for Ruby and the latter was a homosexual. Mitchell, presently working of the Ted Mack Amateur Show in New York, and mother-in-law resides 714 George Street, Queensboro, Kentucky. John Joseph McNaughton, a.k.a. Johnny Turner, an MC presently employed Lil's Jockey Club, advised today he was an MC for Ruby's Carousel Club from November 4th through November 9, 63. Knew Ruby only as a, quote, Jack End, quote, but recognized his photos on television and in newspapers. Described Ruby as nervous, screwy, gangster-type character, but was unable to furnish information concerning latter's personal activities. McNaughton unable to recognize Oswald's photo. McNaughton unable to provide any other pertinent information. Next one, dated November 26th, Miss Bernadine Coleman, Maple Manor Hotel, 65 West Maple, Chicago, advised November 26th instant. She was married to Harry Rubenstein, 1942 to 60, and lived at above address. Harry Rubenstein, described as white male, age 68, 5'11", 180 pounds, dark hair, brown eyes, Catholic religion. Came to Chicago from Seattle, Washington, 1927, and managed the Olympic Hotel, Chicago, 1927-45. Harry Rubenstein got in trouble in 1945 when he killed a bartender in his club, but was later exonerated. He next owned Hollywood Show Lounge, Randolph Street, Chicago, 1946 to 60. He also owned the Randcraft Hotel, which has been demolished. She stated positively Harry Rubenstein has no relation to Jack Ruby. She's never heard the name Jack Ruby before, advises names Jack Ruby and Jack Rubenstein never mentioned by anyone to them when they were in the business of operating nightclubs. She recalls she once bought some tickets to play Oklahoma through a ticket scalper named Sparky, approximately right after World War II, but never saw the man. She denied Harry was a close friend of the hoodlum element in Chicago, although stated anyone in this business would have associated with some. She would furnish no details in this regard. She then stated Harry's present address is unknown to her, and he's believed to be clerking in some cheap hotel, Chicago, and broke. They no longer associate together. She stated she's attempting to contact Harry through mutual friends to set up an interview. So the Harry Rubenstein that they all thought might have been Jack Ruby, who was associated with nightclubs, turns out to not be associated with Jack Ruby or nightclubs anymore. Turns out to be kind of a bum, right? All right, 1126. Files of the Retail Merchants Credit Association, Los Angeles, California, were checked on November 26 instant by S.A. Francis Galloway. They reflect no identifiable records of Jack Leon Ruby under his true name or aliases. So nothing on Jack Ruby in California. You wouldn't really expect there to be. He never really did any business out there. All right, November 27th, 63. Indianapolis tells this date. Background, alleged communist connections. Here we go with the communist stuff again. Probably no connection whatsoever. Following investigation was by S.A. Herbert T. Bradshaw, November 27 instant. Check of 47, Muncie, Indiana. Telephone directory disclosed Sam Jaffe, office of 1215 and 1/2 South Walnut. Ernest Fay, Flatter, 119 North Jefferson, Muncie, Indiana, advised as follows. He operated a bingo game above Jaffe's jewelry store at 215 and 1/2 Walnut Street, Muncie, in 48 until January of 49. He believes Ross Furrier's located on the first floor of this address and Jaffe's jewelry store on the second. He operated his bingo game on the third floor just above Jaffe's jewelry store. In 47 and as far back as 42, the Disabled American Veterans Organization and the local Ironworkers Union had meeting places on the third floor to the rear of his bingo game, and this address, considerable gambling activity by cards and slot machines was conducted by the Disabled American Veterans and the above union. He was closely associated with this gambling activity during this period of time. He does not know of any other types of meetings, including Communist Party meetings, being held at this address or any other address. He's seen the photo of Jack Ruby or Jack Rubenstein, never known this person, knows of no children of Sam Jaffe. A lot of dead ends, right? A lot of taxpayer money going to investigate stuff that turns out to be a bunch of nothing, right? November 27, 63. Rebutel 1125-63 to all SACs in Dallas, Indianapolis, Chicago, New York, Cincinnati, Newark, Jack Rubenstein, Textile Workers Union in New Jersey. Rebutel 1125 identifies captioned Jack Rubenstein as having been born March 25, 1911 at Chicago, Illinois. Review of Newark files reveals references to one Jack Rubenstein, who was an organizer for Textile Workers Union of America in New Jersey area in 1926, at which time he resided at 743 Main Avenue, Passaic, New Jersey. This individual was arrested on 4 occasions in 1926 in Garfield, New Jersey, in connection corresponding paragraph, a bunch of just bullshit with strike activities. However, check reveals on fingerprints available. Arrest records reflected this Jack Rubenstein was 22 years of age in 1926. So a different Jack Rubenstein in Passaic, New Jersey, too. Records of Passaic, New Jersey Police Department reflect Jack Rubenstein of 749 Main Avenue, Passaic, New Jersey, was arrested in April 1926 by that department. His age was 22 in 1926, and his place of birth was given as New York at that time. Latest information in Newark files indicate Jack Rubenstein connected with textile activities in New Jersey area in late 20s and early 30s, was New York State Textile Workers Union of America director. In 1954, was named to serve as Mid-Atlantic director of TWUA. On basis of age of subject, there's no information to indicate the files are identical to Jack Rubenstein connected with this report, blah, blah, blah. Of course, it's not the same guy, but that guy is kind of famous. If you look into that Jack Rubenstein, there's actually a lot of information on him. November 28th, 63. To director in SAC Dallas, Jack Rubenstein. Reference Communist Party connections. Andrew G. Klassen, 4815 Belle Plaine Avenue, apartment 104, Chicago, Illinois, was interviewed by S.A.'s Lamont Pugh and Hugh Mallett on November 25 last, after Klassen telephonically advised he had information regarding Communist Party activity by Ruby. When interviewed, Klassen said that he was 75 years old, unemployed, retired from Chicago PD in 1945, and from then until 1961 employed security departments, Sears Roebuck and Admiral Corporation. He is divorced and lives alone. He occupies his time in the evening by loitering at a newsstand at Irving Park and Milwaukee Avenue in Chicago. On the evening of November 24 last, he was talking about President Kennedy's assassination and about Jack Ruby with two men at his newsstand. He recalls that one of the men... and it cuts off there. Or does it cut off there? Yes, it does. It's missing a page. It is missing a page. He recalls one of the men, and then it ends there, and it picks up on page 3, where it just has some miscellaneous notes about Dave Yaris. Mrs. Yaris, an attorney, Max Lurie interview. That's a duplicate from one before. All right, here we go. He's a retired policeman, name and address unknown, said he thought that years ago Ruby had come to some connection with Alderman Patty Baller, B-A-U-L-E-R, as a bookie. That Ruby was fired for not paying bets that Patty's brother, FNU, first name unknown, Baller, now dead, got Ruby some other unknown job. Baller then fired Ruby, lost this job because Ruby and his sister, name unknown, were handing out communist literature. That's interesting. This is the closest connection we've had of anyone who's actually known Jack Ruby in Chicago. Clayson got no other details concerning Ruby, but could furnish no information to identify this retired policeman except that he was about 70 years old and occasionally comes to the newsstand in the evening. The other person who heard this conversation is Mike, who lives in the Portage Theater building on Milwaukee Avenue, about 70 years old, and a former precinct captain in the neighborhood. Clayson said that he personally did not know Jack Ruby. On November 25 last, investigation at Portage Theater building revealed that this Mike is identical with Mike Splitt, S-P-L-I-T-T, 4913 Kyler, second floor. Splitt was interviewed November 25 last by S.A.'s Pugh and Mallett. He provided the following information. He's 67 years old, retired, former employee with Chicago Park District. He was a former Democratic precinct captain. In the evening, he often hangs around the newsstand at Irving Park and Milwaukee Avenue. On the evening of November 24 last, Andy Klassen said to him and to another man known to Splitt as, quote, red, unquote, white male about 65, a retired policeman, that he had been listening to all the news about Jack Ruby. Klassen said that maybe Ruby was a communist. Klassen said Ruby's picture in the paper looked familiar, and Klassen said he might have even known Ruby years ago. The individual, Red, never at any time in this conversation indicated that he knew Ruby or anything about possible communist activity of Ruby. Splitt said he did not know Ruby. He did not know Red's address or last name. Splitt said that Klassen was a source of trouble to the men that hang around the newsstand, that Klassen was constantly inventing stories, which Splitt did not believe, and that Klassen was always claiming to know a person or that person, when Splitt was sure Klassen was lying. Klassen is most imaginative, according to Splitt, who said that Klassen was losing his mind. Splitt could no longer offer information pertinent to locating Red and denied that he knew anything about Jack Ruby. November 26 last, Andrew Klassen further advised that he had seen Red at the newsstand but failed to learn his identity. According to Klassen, Red claims that he never talked of any communist activities of Ruby, and that Red does not know of any such activities, nor does he know Ruby. Klassen now feels that his cronies at the newsstand are out to get him because they behave in an unusual way towards him. Klassen also recalled that his family had turned against him and that his ex-wife had tried to poison him with phenobarbital. Klassen is lying. He said, thinking about the murders of Oswald, he's convinced that the communists killed Oswald to prevent Oswald from exposing the communist plot to kill President Kennedy. Klassen's not sure exactly what he heard or said at the newsstand on the night of November 24 last, but will call the FBI if he learns Red's identity. Klassen advised November 27 instant that he had seen, quote, Red, unquote, again, but did not learn his name. They talked about Jack Ruby, and Red still denies knowing or saying anything about Ruby. Klassen said he now believes Red and thinks he was confused about the conversation on November 24 last, and that Mike Splitt or someone else must have been talking about Ruby. It was noted in interviewing Klassen that his mind wanders and that he does appear imaginative, and that he is convinced he's been persecuted and mistreated. Next one dated November 24th. All right. Got some, to director in SAC Dallas, got some redactions here from SAC Los Angeles. On November 24 instant, and then you got 3 lines redacted. Furnished the following information to S.A. Richard L. Cromwell. In about 1946, redacted worked as redacted for, and then another 3 lines redacted. This place had food, drinks, and female dancers. It was a hangout for several rough characters, including Lois Green, a man in his late 20s who drove a Cadillac and reputedly carried a machine gun. Dean Gaudin, Gauldin, a real estate man in Dallas believed by Redacted to be of good reputation, and whose son Redacted has heard later became prosecuting attorney for Dallas County, came into Redacted about bi-monthly, where he drank heavily. And he tipped very generously, sometimes giving $35 to a girl to sing a song. One day, Lois Green brought in a man whom Redacted believes to be identical with Jack Ruby, killer of Lee Oswald. The man was introduced as Rubenstein. Present at the time were Weinstein, Dolson, Gaudin, and a Mr. Freeman, who operated restaurant at corner of West Commerce and the Fort Worth turnoff in Dallas. Rubenstein had said that he was from Chicago and stated he wanted to buy a nightclub. Dolson said all he had to do was show the money. Rubenstein produced a huge roll of $100 bills, which he spilled out on the meat block and amounted to $40,000. Redacted said Gaudin, Freeman, Weinstein, and Dolson would recall this incident. Dolson and Weinstein later dissolved their partnership. All are believed to be in Dallas. Weinstein operating Abe's Colony Club, 1522 and 1/2 Commerce Street. Dolson operating Pappy's Showland at the Fort Worth turnoff, and Freeman A Place across the street from Pappy's Showland. Redacted heard Lois Green was shot dead at Freeman's place on New Year's night 7 or 8 years ago. Weinstein did not drink, fight, or gamble. Dolson was rough, quote unquote. Redacted related one incident when Bill Decker, who is now sheriff of Dallas County, was present in Redacted about 1946. Decker threw a glass of wine on Willie, a little Negro boy who was in a dance team called Pat and Little Willie. Dolson immediately closed the place, refunded money to those present, and then personally gave Bill Decker a very thorough beating. Police were not called. No identifiable record of Ruby or Rubenstein in the LA files. All right, to SAC Dallas from the Director of FBI. L.A. Tel, November 24 last, 9:08 p.m. Weinstein, Dolson, Gaudin, and Freeman, restaurant owner in Dallas, should be interviewed. Reference information concerning Rubenstein. 11:29:63 to SAC Dallas from Director FBI. Following information is from Scripps Howard Release, Dallas. Scripps Howard's a news aggregator company. November 29. Prominent Dallas businessman whose name is being withheld received 3 phone calls at his home threatening his life and the life of his invalid wife. If you so much as open your mouth about Jack Ruby, the businessman has been questioned by the FBI, knows Ruby well enough to testify against him. After the 3rd phone call threat, the businessman confided within Wagner Carr, C-A-R, don't get me in any court of inquiry. If I'm subpoenaed, I will go, but I don't want to talk unless Carr puts a gun to my back. Who is this Wagner Carr? Let's pull everything on Wagner, Waggonercarr. Identified businessman referred to above, and Butel details concerning results of his interview and details of threats if he's not been interviewed. This should be handled immediately. 11:29 to Director in SAC Dallas from Cincinnati. Background information regarding subject. M.G. Lohman, L-O-W-M-A-N, Executive Secretary, Circuit Riders, Inc., 110 Government Square, Cincinnati. Contacted Cincinnati office, November 29 instant. Made available to S.A. Thomas Schollard. Letter received from Ed C. Schwilly. 9655 Altone Drive, Dallas, Texas. Letter dated October 26, 63, quoted as follows. Quote, Myers, Dallas, need absolute evidence on Jack Ruby. Present legal name is correct. Born James Leon Rubenstein. I don't believe that's correct. James Leon Rubenstein, circa 1911, Chicago, known as Jack Rubenstein and Jack L. Rubenstein. Ben Gitlow or J.R. Matthews could have info on this man. We must have the sure facts. Come to Dallas circa 1947 or so. Said to have been Young Communist League in 1920. Was a Youth Revolutionary Party 1920 to 1921. That's interesting. His attorneys, Jake Ehrlich and Ronald Butter of California. Let me take a screenshot here because Mr. Jake Ehrlich III is a listener of the podcast, and he's in our JFK chat. Interesting. Was a Youth Revolutionary Party, 1920, 1921. His attorneys, Jake Ehrlich and Ronald Butter of California, C.A. Droby, Tom Howard, and Sam Doherty. This man killed Oswald and conveniently silenced him. Signed, Ed. Call me collect fast if you can make any sure tie-in. Note, Lohman operates Circuit Riders, Inc. as a private anti-communist organization said to combat use of church facilities by communist groups. Contacts with him most circumspect by Cincinnati, so not to be involved in his brand of extremism. Lohman desires Schwilly not be made aware of his letter referred to FBI. Lohman states he's advising Schwilly, Circuit Riders, Inc., taking no action on his request and suggests Schwilly volunteer his information to FBI Dallas. Number 302 being submitted Cincinnati. November 29th, 63. Reference Indianapolis teletype. November 28 last. Background dash alleged communist connections. Following investigation by S.A. Herbert T. Bradshaw on November 29 instant. Milton M. Hiller, Supervisor, Internal Revenue Service. Muncie, Indiana, advised as follows. He knew Sam Jaffe, now deceased, who formerly operated Sam Jaffe Jewelers, South Walnut Street, Muncie. He's Jewish and had close associations with other Jewish persons, including Sam Jaffe at Muncie. He has been with IRS at Muncie since 1936, described Sam Jaffe as being very liberal in his political beliefs, adding he believed Jaffe was a loyal American and believed in the U.S. from something, can't read that. Jaffe was 100% for Franklin Delano Roosevelt. His wife worked for Lawson Jaffe in a business known as Lawson's Jewelers, which was located on the 3rd Street floor of the building where Sam Jaffe had his office on the 2nd floor. He recalls it was a gambling activity on the 3rd floor of the same building. Sam Jaffe has 3 daughters. One of the 3 daughters was married to a person with the last name Chasin, Chasin, or Chasen, who is a certified public accountant in Chicago. Another of the sons-in-law was an actor in Chicago. He knows Morton Pazol, P-A-Z-O-L, quite well, and Pazol is somewhat radical to the left in his political thinking, in that Pazol supported Henry Wallace for president in 1948, but not communist. He believes Rex Jelly, a watchmaker, had an office in the same building as Sam Jaffe, and Jelly ran for mayor at Muncie at some 20 years ago. He does not recall which party ticket Jelly was associated with. He does not know anyone with the last name of Ruby or Rubenstein, does not recall anyone accompanying either of Sam Jaffe's sons-in-law from Chicago, Illinois to Muncie, Indiana in the 1940s or at any other time. He has seen the photograph of Jack Rubenstein in the newspapers. He's never seen this person before. He does not know of any type of meetings held above Sam Jaffe's office on Walnut Street in Muncie or any other meetings possibly held by Sam Jaffe and friends. Captain Fred Denny, Muncie Police Department, advised that Rex Jelly resides at 404 Riverside Avenue, Muncie, that Jelly was a candidate for mayor of Muncie on the Republican ticket about 12 years ago, being unsuccessful. An attempt to contact Rex Jelly at above address was negative, as it was learned Jelly is out of town but will probably return on the evening of November 29 instant. Jelly will be re-interviewed in this matter as soon as he is available. November 29, 63, to Director SAC Dallas and Springfield. Reference Chicago teletype to the Bureau of Springfield and Dallas, dated November 25 last. Misdirected telephone call from Cuba. Mr. George Jossell, Gosselle, 902-6, Kedvale, Skokie, Illinois. I was in a barbershop quartet once in Skokie, Illinois. Subscriber to telephone number Orchard 4-8733. Mr. George Jossell or Gozell, I don't know which one it is, 902-6 Kedvale, Skokie, Illinois, who is self-employed in the accounting and tax business, Chicago, Illinois, advised S.A. Lansing P. Logan and S.A. John P. Quinlan on November 28 last that an unusual long-distance telephone call was received last Sunday evening, November 24 last, from Cuba. Giselle stated that telephone call was answered by his daughter, Judy Giselle, of the same address. Miss Judy Giselle, who was a senior at something University in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, interviewed same date at 9026 Kedvale, Skokie, Illinois, by S.A.'s Logan and Quinlan, advised that at approximately 7 p.m. on November 24 last, she entered the telephone at her parents' residence, at which time the operator, who appeared to have foreign accent, stated, "You have a long-distance call for Dr. Rubenstein from Havana, Cuba." In response, Miss Giselle told the operator that no one by the name of Rubenstein lived there. She thereafter heard the operator advise the calling party, a foreign-speaking female, that Dr. Rubenstein was not at the address immediately thereafter. The female caller stated she would talk to anyone at that number. Ms. Giselle advised that the woman caller then stated, "I want to talk with Dr. Rubenstein." Again, the caller was advised that the individual was not known at that address. The caller then asked, "Is this Peoria, Illinois?" At which time Ms. Giselle stated no. The caller then hung up. Realizing the situation concerning the assassination of President Kennedy, Ms. Giselle felt concerned, and approximately 5 minutes after receiving the call, she obtained the code number for Peoria, Illinois from an unknown operator in Chicago. Therefore, attempted to contact the same telephone number in Peoria, Illinois. She stated that the telephone number was busy. Approximately 15 minutes later, Ms. Giselle called an unknown operator in Chicago and advised of the circumstances surrounding the call she received from Havana, Cuba, at which time the operator contacted the party in Peoria, Illinois, and asked the individual whether or not he had received a call from Cuba. Ms. Giselle stated that she had heard a foreign-speaking man whose name she believed was Ruben Font, F-O-N-T, advised the operator that his father had called, or that his father was there from Cuba. She could not recall the exact text of the conversation. Ms. Giselle stated that she thereafter talked briefly with the operator, and as much as the call still seemed somewhat suspicious, and asked the operator if she should report this telephone call to anyone. The operator told Miss Giselle that if she did not feel right about the call, she could call the FBI and relay the same information. Miss Giselle advised that her parents and company that this particular evening, and that one of these men had listened to the conversation on an extension. His name is Mr. Kenneth Bain and can be contacted at telephone number blah, blah, blah. Both Judy Giselle and her father, George, advised they're not acquainted with anyone named Rubenstein. Could only associate the name with what they had heard from the news media during the past few days. Next one, 1125, reference Jack Ruby. Records Military Personnel Records Center, St. Louis, disclosed that Jack Rubenstein, serial number 3666-6107, inducted into U.S. Army Air Corps, May 21, 43. Entered on active duty May 28, 43, Camp Grant, Illinois. Rubenstein honorably discharged February 21, 46 as private first class at Fort Sheridan, Illinois by reason of demobilizations. Rubenstein served in enlisted reserve corps in active status May 21, 43 to May 27, 43. Military occupation shown as airplane engine mechanic, and civilian occupation as manager, owner, and salesman, Earl Products Company. Location not shown. Company engaged in sales of novelties. During period of service was stationed at following places: June 443 to June 943, Company B, 1633 in Camp Grant, Illinois. June 10th, 43 to September 3, 43, Company AAF Military Police, Recruit Training Center, Keesler Field, Mississippi. September 543 to February 1544, 793 TSS Seymour Johnson Field, North Carolina. February 15th, 44 to March 23, 44. 18th Air Force Technical Training Detachment, Republic Aviation Corps, Farmingdale, New York. April 26, 44 to June 7, 44. D2 Static Crew Section, Bluthenthal Field, North Carolina, June 9th, 44 to November 27, 45. 114th Air Force Base in Chatham Field, Georgia. So basically, Jack Ruby got to evade the entire war here in America. November 27, 45 to December 45, 301st Air Force Base, Drew Field, Florida. December 8, 45 to February 17, 46, 300 Air Force Base, Tampa, Florida. February 17, 46, transferred from Tampa, Florida to Fort Sheridan, Illinois, where he was discharged. Service records reflect Rubenstein on furlough on following dates: March 24 to April 11, 44, November 5 to 18, 44, May 5 to 24, 45, and December 15th, 45 to January 2, 46. Rubenstein had no foreign service, was awarded World War II Victory Medal, American Theater Ribbon, and Good Conduct Medal. Character and efficiency ratings ranged from unknown to excellent, no record of any court-martials or absence without official leave. Record reflected qualified as sharpshooter with carbine, 1 rifle, February 10th, 44, while assigned Seymour Johnson Field, North Carolina. Service record disclosed Rubenstein, born March 25, 1911, Chicago, Illinois, educated 1-year high school. Marital status single. Relatives listed as Joseph and Fanny. Brothers: Hyman Earl. Sisters Eileen and Marion Rubenstein, all residing 3650 Lexington, Chicago, Illinois. Doesn't say anything about Samuel Ruby there. Above record reviewed by ASEC Donald Morley and Leonard Lewis, November 25 instant. Contacts with informants familiar with gambling activity, St. Louis Division, unable to furnish any information on Ruby. Corresponding page, blah, blah, blah. Some corrections there. It looks like that one's it. And let me read this next one. This will be the last one. We'll wrap it up for today. November 25th, 63. Reed Bureau Tel, all SACs, November 25 instant. Robert Kirkwood, 1277 Bryan Road, Columbus, Ohio, interviewed November 25 instant at his request by S.A. Thomas Bresson. Kirkwood, patient, Grants Hospital, Columbus, furnished to Columbus PD. He formerly knew Jack Ruby. Kirkwood explained he left home, St. Louis, Missouri, in 1959, hitchhiked to Venice, Texas, to visit a girl. Kirkwood arrived in Dallas several days later without funds and stayed at the YMCA, where he met Jack Ruby in the weightlifting room. Ruby learned Kirkwood was without funds, gave him a job as a cleaning man at the Vegas Club Dallas, and furnished him a room at his residence. Kirkwood stated there were 3 bedrooms at his residence, location not recalled. Ruby sleeping in one bedroom, Kirkwood in another, and an unidentified man in the third. Kirkwood stated he never met the third individual, could not recall his name. Kirkwood does not know any associates of Ruby other than employees whose names he could not recall who worked at the Vegas Club. He described Ruby as a nice person with a very hot temper. He never heard Ruby engage in political discussions and described him as a loyal American. Kirkwood stated he did not know Oswald or any of Ruby's associates. Kirkwood advised he cannot read or write and stated on November 24 last he was interviewed by a Columbus, Ohio television station concerning his acquaintance with Ruby. For info, Kirkwood was born February 7th, 1943, Rochester, Pennsylvania. Occupied as an electric motor mechanic and married with 2 children. He claims no arrests except for drunken petty theft while as a youth. Cincinnati informants being contacted with negative results. So he was born in 1943, but allegedly, when was this contact with Jack Ruby? 1959. No, so he was like 16 or 17. Gotcha. All right, so let's wrap this up here for today, and we will pick it up here tomorrow. Thanks for tuning in, everybody.